It's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today, I wanted to share with you a wonderful slideshow that my colleague, Kaylee, that I work with, and myself presented for our workplace on internal family systems therapy. I'm hoping that this video will help you better understand the model, parts, why we have parts, and how to heal from complex trauma. So without further ado, let me share my screen and we'll get to it. All right, welcome. Here we go. All right, so on this screen is some of Kaylee and I's parts. So on the left are my parts. You see the statue of the Buddha there, which very much represents self energy. You know, it's wise, it's calm, it's connected, it has courage and clarity and compassion. That very much represents self energy for me. But on the right is a cute little stuffed dinosaur that I have. And that represents some of my child parts, you know, parts that were innocent and loved my stuffies when I was little and, you know, has child energy like curiosity and creativity and playfulness and joy. So yeah, and then Kaylee shared some of her parts as you see on the right. She loves nature. So she feels self energy when she's out in nature. And she also put a stuffy. So we have some similarities there. All right, so this is kind of what we're going to go over today. We're going to basically understand what is IFS, why do we use it, how IFS paves the way for healing and shows up in the therapy room, getting curious about any therapist parts. This is for any therapist that might be here, or if you're not a therapist, just parts, just your parts in general, and how we can take care of ourselves. All right. So you might have seen this on another video of mine on my channel where I showed this wonderful image here. This is really the crux of what we're trying to work on with internal family systems therapy is all the wounded parts that we got from our complex trauma in our childhoods. As you can kind of visibly see here, we have generations before us that maybe were verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and you see how that pattern just kind of passes down from one person to the next until finally it comes maybe to us. Maybe we're the chain breaker and we say, no more. You know, the trauma is going to stop with me and I'm not going to pass on this horrible curse to my children and they will never have to know what I went through. So yeah, that's the work we're doing here. All right, so what is self and what are parts? All right, so this is from the wonderful Internal Family Systems Institute. It's a wonderful website that you can go to if you want to for more information. Self basically is the core of who we are. You know, it's our humanity. It's the part that contains leadership qualities. You know, it has access to the 8 C's is what we call it. That's compassion, you know, clarity, courage, connectedness, calm, you know, and it has perspective. It can see the larger picture without very strong emotions kind of impacting the way we see things. It has access to curiosity. So it's not judgmental. It's very gentle. And confidence. And the self is best equipped to lead the internal family of all of our wounded parts. Our wounded parts are very much child parts from a lot early in our lives. They're the wounds that kind of drive some of the distress that we feel and the behaviors that we do. And parts is basically, IFS calls them subpersonalities. The way I look at them is just different versions of me at different ages that took on different jobs or roles because they had to keep me safe. You know, say I was going through lots of verbal abuse from a parent, for example, I might have core wounds related to like shame or not feeling good enough. And so I developed parts to help me deal with those very painful and difficult emotions. Maybe parts that became people pleasing, for example, to try to stay safe. Maybe parts that disassociated, for example, just to numb and not feel. And so parts very much take on what we call jobs or roles. They used to be normal, healthy child aspects of ourselves, again, like playfulness and curiosity, parts that love to explore. And instead of just being a child, these parts got recruited to take on jobs or roles to help our system stay safe while we were being abused. All right, so here, this is one of my favorite slides here. This is going to really tell you the different parts and kind of how they behave and what they do. So exiles are young parts that have been frozen in time. And I see this very often when I work with clients with IFS. You'll go back, you'll be working with a certain part, and you'll find out, aha, this is a part that's actually stuck back in a specific memory and has no idea that today is very different and that it had maybe had some freedom, that it's not stuck, that it's not being abused currently. So yeah, these parts are frozen in time and they carry the feelings and beliefs related to that time period when we were being abused. And they're really the original wound. And they're kept away from our conscious awareness, for example, by our managers and our firefighters, which are both protectors. They protect in different ways, but they're both protectors. And so as you can see here, some of these exiles are like shame, fear, terror, sadness, loneliness, worthlessness, grief, being broken, not being good enough, feeling unlovable. Ooh, yeah. You probably can feel some of the energy of just even those words. They're the deep, deep wounds and pain that we feel inside when we go through complex trauma and that relationship trauma from childhood. Now, managers are a little bit different. A lot of people kind of like their managers. They kind of help them in their day-to-day lives and are pretty helpful. Oftentimes on the surface, they seem like they're pretty helpful. They run our daily life and our interactions with others with the goal of kind of keeping any of the exiles from acting up. And so they might manifest as maybe parts that are over controlling, parts that caretake other people and put your own needs last, so to speak, so that you keep everyone else around you happy. I call those people-pleasing parts. Organizing, so ones that need everything just so, and they're super organized. Analytical, overanalyzer parts. Ooh, that's one I see frequently too. People that keep some of the strong emotions at bay by being over-analytical and overthinking. Procrastinator parts. See procrastinator parts come up when people are afraid to even try. For example, they're so used to maybe bad things happening or being a failure, for example, that they have procrastinator parts that are like, yeah, don't even try. That way we'll stay safe. We won't even get our hopes up. Planning, so over planning parts. Critical parts. Ooh, the criticizer. That's a common one that a lot of people carry. It's kind of the voice of mom or dad. Oftentimes, we oftentimes end up self-abusing or criticizing ourselves in the same way that the parent did. Pessimistic parts. Parts are just like, it'll never get better. Nah, life is just really terrible. There's no hope. Why am I even here? They can't ever see the bright side of life. People-pleasing parts. So absolutely, that's that fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That fourth one, fawn, is people-pleasing. That's giving in to the abuser and keeping them happy, trying to stay safe. Perfectionistic parts, see this one a lot as well. If I can just be perfect and do everything the right way, then I'll be able to stay safe. Skeptical parts, we see skeptical parts a lot too as we start IFS that are like, I don't trust you and I don't trust this process. And anytime I've trusted in the past, it's really come out to burn me. So I'm just going to not trust. Yeah, no. So yeah, these are our managers. Now, firefighters are the more extreme protectors. These are parts, for example, that really swoop in and take over anytime we feel emotional distress. So they're very, very reactive and very swift. And they often act in explosive, uncontrollable, and unpredictable ways with the goal of soothing the exile and distracting. So things like binge eating, addictive behaviors, excessive spending, risky behaviors, disassociation or numbing, distraction, self-harm, rage, suicidality, violence. So you can see how these ones typically on the surface cause the most harm and oftentimes drive people into therapy, for example. So yeah, firefighters are trying to make the pain stop right now, like right now. And so they can be pretty extreme. Both managers and firefighters their intentions are good. So none of these parts, for example, have bad intentions. All of their intentions are good. They're just trying to protect us from pain. But unfortunately, what we see so often is they kind of shoot us in the foot. They're trying to help in the moment, but they really are basing their current actions on things that used to help us in the past that don't really serve us right now in the present. So that's why we work with the past, because the past is very much alive in the present and very much kind of running our lives, and oftentimes not for the best. All right, so here's some images of some of these parts. For example, you might have kind of a clown or a jokester part that just keeps everything light and funny, avoids emotional distress by being kind of the clown. There's a good picture of the criticizer there with her arms crossed, and nothing you do is ever right. Parts that hide. Yes, very much. Parts that hide, that fight, flight, freeze fawn. This is definitely a hide, kind of a freeze or hiding away part. And then parts, for example, on the right that very much feel almost like ghosts of ourselves. So like sometimes disassociation can feel very much like you're barely even there. You're just a wisp of yourself. A disassociation is a freeze part. That's where we're shut down. And it's a protector as well. All right, we're going to go over some of the many faces of parts here. This is where we are going to I'm just going to stop talking and I'll just let you feel these images as we go through them. All right, you just let whatever kind of comes to mind inside of you and just be with it. No judgment, just kind of let the feelings arise and just notice anything you might be observing within yourself as we go through these images. All right, did you notice anything? A lot of those parts have powerful, powerful imagery, and it just kind of really gets to the heart of some of the wounds that we are experiencing. So the next images will be of protector or manager parts. So again, those are the ones that on the surface people kind of like. They kind of manage life. All right. So we got like overthinking parts. Feels like, I like to say it's like a 50 hamster wheels with 50 hamsters all going at the same time. That's kind of like what anxiety feels like. Anxiety is a protector. Yeah, that's that overthinking part. We can feel like we have all sorts of emotions and voices inside of us sometimes. Ooh, when the world feels too heavy and we're juggling too much. So parts that overdo it, right? They just keep taking on more, more, more. Ah, parts that overwork, like workaholism, right? Yeah. Distract from kind of distress by just constantly being busy. Ooh, anger. Anger is a primary protector for sure. Anger hides sadness. I like to say anger is sadness's big brother. Ah, yes, people pleasing hides the real you oftentimes, and we're not using our voice and we're not taking care of our own needs. It's a painful thing to experience, shutting your own needs down repeatedly to keep other people happy. Feeling like we're masking, that we're not really ourselves. We have to take on these different faces to be safe around certain people. Parts that beat ourselves up and criticize ourselves. Yeah, it's sad, right? Sometimes oftentimes the abuser's not even around and we're still self-abusing without even realizing it. Parts that, again, kind of over controlling, criticizing, you can't do anything right, micromanaging parts. Good old inner critic. This one really hits home for me. I can relate to this one. Nothing you do is ever good enough. Here she is even just judging her own self, not even close to a stick person. The sun is not yellow. It's too big of a tree. Yeah. Nothing you do ever feels like it's good enough. Must draw something. Yeah. So again, feeling inadequate. Exhaustion. A lot of parts are very, very exhausted. So when we do IFS, oftentimes the whole goal is not to get rid of the parts, is to transform them and allow them to be who they authentically actually really are. And a lot of them are very, very exhausted from protecting us in the specific ways that they have been for so very long. Here's our survival firefighter parts. Extreme anger or rage. Again, make the pain stop right now. It's not a lot of rational thought behind a lot of these firefighter parts. They're just kind of explosive protective mechanisms. Diet culture. Ooh, yeah, eating disorders, right? It's like our attempt to try to feel better by starving ourselves into nothingness, over controlling our body size. Yeah, again, that kind of prankster jokester. Parts that disappear, disassociation. Yeah, where you don't even feel real anymore. Disassociation helps us to not feel, shuts them down, shuts the emotions down. Binge eating, overeating, substance use, and more disassociation, rage, anger, the violent storms within us, right? Another great depiction of anger. And another. Parts that numb out with technology, always on our phones, always on the computer. Helps us not feel, right? It's a distractor. Great distractor. Again, more substance use. Suicide. Suicidality is a strong protector. It actually doesn't really want to die, it just wants the pain to stop. All right. And what does the self feel like? So let's contrast that to what the self feels like and what energy does self actually take on and have just inherently. I'll just let you kind of let these images sink in again. All right. How'd you feel when you saw some of those? Did you notice an energy shift inside? Self has a very, very much a quality of freedom and safety and softness and openness. I've promised my inner child that I will never again abandon myself for anything or anyone else again. This one is so powerful. I myself have experienced this, as have many of my clients, when we learn for the first time that a lot of times our wounded parts did not trust us because we had actually self-abandoned repeatedly. And so that's why we do this internal work on the inside with IFS to restore that trust between self and part. That's been broken, and we have to restore that for the internal chaos to really reduce and for that self-led wisdom to come through and be able to guide us. Love. Yes, self-energy is love. Not only love for ourselves, but love for others. It feels very safe and light and connected and creative, where all your parts work in harmony. None of them are fighting with one another. They all can understand and use compassion. Nature, that beauty of nature. You know, being able to truly love and guide and protect all your inner children. There's that beautiful wisdom, the courage to guide us, even when times are tough or we're alone. Self is able to guide fearlessly. Am I good? Am I loved? Am I safe? Yes, you are. When self is present, we are safe finally within ourself. Oops, I accidentally went past one too fast. All right, how do we restore self-leadership? So that's the goal here. Trauma really, again, breaks the connection between self and parts. And it also breaks the connection between our mind and our bodies, actually. So how does IFS do this? Here are some wonderful qualities here that we're going to really be using when we restore self-energy. We're able to be peacemakers now. We can bring peace to the earth by making our own life peaceful. The less at war we are with ourselves, the less we commit acts of atrocity or harm other people. Happiness. Again, when our spiritual needs are met by an untroubled inner life, we have happiness. And it comes when our work and our words are of benefit to ourselves and others. Courage. Self has courage. It's not the absence of fear or despair, but the strength to really conquer them. Love, an inspired form of giving. Love breathes life into the heart and brings grace to the soul. I think love is really the undercurrent of this world. It's what our world needs more of. It's what we missed in our childhood. It's what damaged us, the lack of it. Love restores this. Tranquility, the peace that comes when energies are in harmony and relationships are in balance. So tranquility is really about balance. Doesn't mean that life doesn't have storms and that life doesn't have painful things, but there's a balance. And wisdom, using our knowledge, our beautiful, wise intuition, and our own personal experiences. When they all combine and guide us in our lives. All right, we're going to skip this here. This was something we did when we were training the rest of our colleagues. I will definitely have experiential guided meditations later on, so be looking out for those. Feel free to check back again on my channel, subscribe to it, liking my videos. All of this really helps, and I will definitely have guided meditations in the near future so that you can practice some of this. All right, so the goals of IFS is to increase self-leadership. So again, a lot of the distress we feel, it's just all parts. The analogy I like to give is that pretend you're in a kindergarten classroom and there's no teacher present. It's just a bunch of children. You can imagine the absolute chaos that would ensue with no teacher present. People might be spitting spitballs at one another. Maybe a kid's over there lighting a fire in the corner of the classroom. Somebody's over there smacking another kid. It's just absolute chaos. Well, that's what it feels like inside of us when we don't have self-energy. Self is that beautiful, wise, loving, nurturing teacher, that mentor. And when he or she is present in the classroom, the kids will settle down and they will listen and they will be guided by that wise mentor who can really, again, be nurturing and loving and kind and compassionate with those children. We want to increase our own access to self and reduce any roles or distress that the parts are holding. Again, as I mentioned, parts are actually taking on roles or jobs to try to keep us safe. But that was based on the past. Present is very different. They have to learn how to do things differently, that the present isn't holding all that trauma anymore. We want to increase communication and relationship and trust between parts and self. It's very much an internal family. That's why it's called internal family. So if the family of parts are distressed and not communicating well, not trusting one another, we feel chaos, we feel distress. So we're going to reduce that by improving communication and trust between self and parts and between parts. And we're going to help that by unburdening wounds, basically. So again, those wounds are those core exiles. That's the shame, the unworthiness, not feeling good enough. Those are all those original wounds that mom and dad instilled in us through the trauma. And again, when we do this, relational healing happens. We've actually restored relationships back to the way they should have always have been. And now the conductor can lead the orchestra, or the teacher, the mentor can guide the classroom. So again, Frank Anderson, another amazing IFS teacher. Here's a direct quote from him. IFS helps release parts from their extreme roles and repairs the chasm created between parts and the self as a result of trauma. Parts are able to restore trust in self-leadership and fluidly integrate back into the whole system. That's kind of exactly what I just explained. So here's the 8 C's of self. You will know that you are in self, for example, when these aspects are present. Clarity. So I like to explain that clarity is the absence of very strong emotions or very rigid black and white thinking. If you have black and white, all or nothing, good, this is all good, all bad, you are all evil, they are all good. This is an absence of clarity. That is not a self quality. Self is non-judgmental. It doesn't judge others. So clarity is able to have wisdom to kind of see the gray areas in the middle ground and understand various sides without being very strongly emotionally triggered. Compassion, courage. So again, doesn't mean that we're not scared. It just means that we have the strength to go through something that we're scared of. Confidence. So not ego, not like I'm better than everyone else, but just healthy self-confidence. Like I'm a good person fundamentally. I'm worthy of love. Curiosity. Curiosity is one of the key qualities of self, energy. So again, non-judgmental. We're just going to get curious about what parts need and what burdens they're holding, what they need from us, Curious. It's not judging. It wants to get to know. Creativity, calmness, connection. So these are the 8 C's. So when we are doing IFS, it's nice to kind of check in and get an idea of, in the beginning, where does the client rate themselves? 1 to 5 on each one of these is kind of like a pie chart here. You can color in yourself, kind of give yourself 1 to 5, 5 being the top level. Where would you put yourself on each one of these? Would it be 0, 1, 2, somewhere in the middle? Maybe it's 5. And then when we do IFS, it's kind of nice to check back later on and say, have any of these gone up, these qualities here? Have I improved? You can feel free to pause the video and read through these. So family systems theory is really the foundation of IFS. Dick Schwartz is the founder of IFS. He was originally a systems therapist. So again, in brief, really, family systems therapy is really about understanding the whole family as a system of unique parts or people. Your siblings, your parents, each one is going to have their own perspectives and needs and thoughts and feelings. And when there's a lot of chaos and dysfunction and trauma, nobody's really, communicating very well. And the whole system is chaotic and distressed. So just like an external family, our actual families, that we grew up in, we also have a family on the inside, the internal system of parts. And we're trying to create less chaos and better communication and better clarity and, decreasing shame and those exiles and those burdens. And here is some wonderful pictures of that self-to-part relationship healing as we start to heal the internal family. Again, everybody's going to be operating smoothly and there's going to be a sense of connection. You're not going to feel very strong, polarized emotions and thoughts. You're going to sense like harmony and connection and good communication. Smiling with compassion, she sat down next to that part of her that was afraid to move forward. You can still love them without carrying their baggage, she whispered to herself. Maybe fully loving them can only truly happen by releasing of them and the claiming of you. I love that. So oftentimes moving forward, it is really about releasing all the things that our family gave us, especially the bad things, and reclaim really the story of us. And as I like to say, we are now the author of our life. Our families no longer get to write in the book of us. We fully actually can become the author of our life for the first time. And we're writing the chapters out now, not our families anymore. It's a lot of freedom when we heal and become our authentic, true self. This is one of my favorite images. This is very much how I see myself now that I've done a lot of this work. I am like the mother tree, so to speak, the wise, beautiful, strong mother tree, and I protect and shade all my little inner children, and they are safe with me. They don't have to fear me anymore. I am safe and loving and kind and compassionate, and I listen to them, and I am their nurturing parent. IFS very much is a form of reparenting. We're parenting ourselves for the first time in ways that we've never been parented when we were younger. Again, that teacher who's that wonderful mentor and kind and compassionate and guides all those adorable little children. And there's, it's calm. The children know what the rules are and expectations, and they know their needs will be taken care of. And it's good energy. I love you just the way you are. It's unconditional love. We're able to unconditionally love all those parts of us. Again, no judgment. We're never judging parts, the wounded parts, and the managers and the firefighters. They're just trying to help. They don't know any other way of being. And our job is to teach them there's a new way of being. And it's rooted in safety, deep safety, and self-compassion and love. Protectors versus self-energy here. Yes. And so we use IFS. Really, it is an evidence-based method. That's what's so great. It is an evidence-based therapy modality now. It's non-stigmatizing, which means it's not going to cause harm to people of minority groups. It treats everybody with the exact same level of compassion and love and gentleness, and everybody is just as worthy as anyone else. It's non-invasive. It's a very gentle approach. It's not going to be kind of really going in there and, before the parts are ready. So no, we always ask for permission. We're going as slowly as parts feel comfortable doing so. It's compassionate. It's heart-centered. And it's great for traumatic stress, complex PTSD, major depressive disorder, general anxiety disorder, personality disorders. SUDS stands for subjective units of distress, so very high distress levels. It works to address distorted thoughts and beliefs that we get from our childhoods. It also supports the movement and discharge of physical sensations in the body. We ask clients and check in with them what their body is telling them along the way. It supports mindfulness, that mind-body connection. Emotions, it facilitates the release of painful feelings like unworthiness and loneliness and feeling unlovable. And it heals the wounds that parts of us carry and opens up the capacity for confidence and self-compassion and courage and wonder. Here's kind of a list of everything IFS therapy can help with. So as you can see, it helps with a lot of stuff. This really is deep, deep healing. It's not surface healing. It really is healing from the inside out. When they said happiness was an inside job, they were right. Yes. Here's an example of how our parts work. Pre-therapy in everyday life. So for example, here to the left, pretend your boss yells at you. Maybe that activates an old wound, related to maybe your parent yelling at you all the time when you were a kid and you felt unworthy. And so the exile, again, that original wound inside of you has that triggered reaction of, oh my gosh, why does dad always yell at me? I'm no good, but it's your boss, but you're being flooded with the same emotions that you felt when your dad yelled at you, which then activates a protector who's like, oh no, I feel pain. This is not good. Quick. Let me get some alcohol. That'll make it go away. Or, perhaps a manager. Let's figure out how you can be perfect and never get rejected again. So yeah, those people-pleasing parts, right? That are like, ooh, I gotta do absolutely nothing wrong to have value. And so meanwhile, Andre cannot figure out why he struggles to cut back on his drinking, why he cannot speak to his boss about, yelling at him. So that's kind of what happens. This is us pre-therapy. And the change when we learn to be self-guided is completely different. We're not going to reach for alcohol at the first sign of distress, for example. If parts that get activated, that start to do the initial people pleasing, we're able to kind of self-soothe more quickly and be able to be assertive and stand up for ourselves in a respectful way. We're not going to just sit there and let people mistreat us anymore, but we're able to protect ourselves in a healthy, positive way. All right, so this was another experiential exercise. And as I mentioned, I'll be doing more of these guided meditations in other videos on my channel here in the near future. This was a time for reflection. Here is another great example of how IFS works. These are the 6 Fs. So the 6 Fs is really what an IFS therapist will be asking you during a typical IFS session. So they're going to ask you to focus your attention inward. They're going to ask you to check, any sensations that might arise or thoughts or feelings. You're just going to notice. So this is mindfulness. So you're noticing without judgment, just mindfully observing, no judgment, just whatever comes up. You're just getting curious. Again, that self-quality. You're getting curious about what's going on inside of you. You're going to make this your target part. And you're going to notice where it's located in your body. So again, we're restoring that mind-body connection. A lot of trauma is stored in the body. You're going to focus on it. And you're going to spend some time gathering your attention and letting the part show itself to you in whatever way it wants to. Sometimes parts show up as one thing initially, but then as we get to know them, they transform into something different, something more authentic. Flesh out. So you're going to allow that part to contact you in whatever way it wants. We're going to ask our clients, for example, does it come to you with a specific image? Does it make any sounds? Does it tell you anything? Maybe it has no words, for example. It might just be body sensations. That happens too. And then here is that wonderful self-energy detector question. We're going to ask you how you feel towards the part. So if you answer anything other than something positive, like, well, I'm curious about it, or I feel kind of sad, that it's been carrying this burden, that tells us self-energy is present. But if instead we hear a client say, oh God, I hate this part. Oh, this part's so stupid. That is not self-energy. That is another part having a reaction to the exile. So yeah, and again, no judgment. We just notice our reaction to this part as we become aware of it. Are you patient? Do you want it to go away quickly? Do you want to allow it to just be as it wants to be, or do you want to control it? Is your heart open to this part? So this is really checking for self-energy. And if self-energy is present, for example, we begin to befriend the part. So this is a huge step. We are now building relationships and befriending these parts and getting to know them. So yeah, how did it get its job? Is it exhausted? How satisfied is it with this job that it's been doing? What would it like to be doing if it didn't have this job? A lot of these parts, again, natural child parts like curiosity, exploration, playfulness, humor. Yeah, they were normal parts of you at one point that got recruited to really do these jobs like people pleasing or drinking or whatever to stop the pain. They're exhausted. They really don't want to be doing the job that they're doing. Sometimes they're too afraid to try something new because this is all they've ever known. And that's okay. It's part of the relationship building. They will trust us eventually. And transformation happens when the part learns that it doesn't have to do the same job anymore. You get a certain age, how old is the part? A lot of times, again, these are very young child parts. Sometimes they're teenager or a little bit older, but a lot of them are very, very young child parts. And then you find out, the last one, fear. You find out what the protector is scared, what would happen basically if it stopped doing the job. That's kind of the crux. Why is it doing this job? What is it afraid of if it stopped doing it? For example, people pleasing. What is the people pleasing part afraid of if it stops people pleasing? Maybe it's actually afraid of abandonment. If I stop pleasing people, they won't love me. It's like, well, gee, would you actually want to have people around you that didn't love you because you had good boundaries? Like, that sounds like that's a person that shouldn't be around you, period. We'll skip this one too, because a lot of these are, okay, this is the last slide here. This is going to be some resources if you're interested in more information on IFS. These are some great resources here. So feel free to pause and jot these down if you would like. And that's it. That's it. So I'm going to stop sharing here. So I really hope that you found this presentation helpful in understanding what IFS is, how it helps us with complex trauma. I hope you have a better answer as to how to move forward. But the answer really lies in healing for us from the inside out, creating that beautiful, wise self-energy connection, being guided by self and not by wounded parts. And I'll be doing some wonderful guided meditations in the near future, as I mentioned. I want this channel to be as helpful as possible for people to have access to some of these wonderful ideas and concepts that they might otherwise not have access to. So again, if you found this video helpful, please leave me a like. I would really appreciate it. Please subscribe. There'll be lots more coming. And I thank you so much for being with me. Take care, everybody.